So it was pretty much like, well, we have money in the account. We know how, so let's try to keep it fully allocated as much as possible. So we're just like, anytime we had money, it's like, let's go try to find another property to add to it. So I started out with two at a time. We bought two right off the bat. And then literally like after the first two flips, we bought the lot for our spec build, which I just finished last year. Like it took forever to get drawings and stuff, but we really ramped it. I mean, it was like two lipstick flips and then you're buying a new build.
Welcome to the Top Tier Podcast, where we take you to new heights in the world of real estate, capital raising, and business entrepreneurship. Meet your hosts, Daniela and Landon, industry experts passionate about success. Join them on the Top Tier Podcast as they share real-world experiences, practical solutions, and strategies to overcome business and real estate challenges. From expert interviews to actionable advice, they aim to inspire and empower you. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Top Tier with Landon and Daniela. Today, we're going to talk to Kip Shearer, and we're really excited to dig into all the things he's been up to in the last few years. Landon, take it away.
Yeah, I am super excited. I personally know Kip. I've had him at one of my property meetups before, as well as him and I've done a deal together. And so him and I built a relationship. I've been to one of his multi-million-dollar new builds here in Arizona. And I'm so honored to have him on the podcast here to learn a little bit more about his journey. And there's so many nuggets that are going to be forthcoming or upcoming here that you guys can take action on and learn from his mistakes and learn from his successes that you guys can go out and do your first, second, third, or fourth flip. So I'm excited to introduce Kip Shearer to the stage. Let's bring him up. Boom. There's Kip. What's up, Kip?
Hey guys.
Thank you for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we can't wait to chat further. And, I took some notes and learned a little bit more deeper about you. And, there's so much behind the scenes that people don't know about Kip. And I know you're hitting the ground running hard and doing a lot, not only just in the real estate space as a licensed real estate agent here in Arizona, but you're also, a husband of 10 freaking years. Congratulations to you and your beautiful wife.
Thank you.
And you have three kids, boy, girl, boy, 5, 3, 2. And are you guys going to have any more? You got one coming up here soon, or what's going on?
We'd like
You
to
think
have
one more floor is the number?
I never thought I'd have 4 kids if you asked me 10 years ago, honestly. But we got to 3. 3 just happened so fast. It was like boom, boom, boom. And now we feel like, I don't know. It's like we don't really want to be done. We love our kids. It's crazy, but it is the best.
Oh, it is.
So I don't know. If we, I think.
Oh, that's fantastic. There's nothing like a big, loud, crazy family, honestly. I have 2 boys back to back, the third on the way. And I think we've just accepted our fate in that's just how we're rolling now. And it's sort of awesome.
Yeah. Once you kind of just embrace the craziness and just go, okay, I can't fight it. So, this is just how life is going to be, and you just get used to that. And I feel like it helps you in business, honestly, because you're used to things being out of control always. So for me, like the most challenging time of my day is from 5 p.m. on. It's like I can control for the most part business stuff, but kids are just a total wild card all the time.
That's so true. And I'm a new father, new parent. My daughter's 17 months, I think it is. And then we have a 6-week-old. And so we're kind of in this, obviously we're in the trenches 2 under 2 and diapers and the full 9 of figuring out us and everything. But you're so spot on in just the challenges that come alongside that of navigating parenthood and navigating being a father and all those, but it's the greatest feeling of all time. It's why you do what you do. And it's amazing. And also too, like I've gotten to a point, I'm sure you're there, is that a lot of people's opinions that don't have kids matter much less to me now.
They get very quiet.
Yep. So
you don't know what you're talking about. So let's just
you have no idea. Oh, you're going to Ibiza and then Cabo. Yeah, that's okay. Cool. Right on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I know.
But I think this is like a great segue into you had this really stable career as an engineer, and I'm sure that for the majority of your marriage, that's what was the deal. That was standard. And here comes 2020.
Yeah.
But how do things change for you?
Well, so yeah, I was an engineer. Landon, you know, it's a stable job. Like when you come out of school, it's stable. You make decent money. You feel like you're kind of set up.
Yeah.
But it's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility without really the upside potential. It's like the engineers are the ones that get put all the work gets put on your shoulders, and then the business owners are the ones that make all the money. So it's hard to leave though, because it's like it's steady, it's safe, you're valued, you're needed always, you know. So what really did it for me, I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. I come from my dad's a doctor. My mom became a realtor when I was in high school, but she was a nurse before
Oh,
then.
cool.
So the values of entrepreneurship were never like passed down to us. So the thought was you're either a doctor, an engineer, some sort of professional role. And then my wife really opened up my eyes shortly after we got married. She got a sales job, and within a few years, she was, making more than me, like just fully living like in her potential. And I felt like, man, I'm just living small. Like I, I have talents and I just feel like I'm not using them, you know? So she's the one that really inspired me to try to push beyond that. But there's always that fear holding me there. When we got married, she had a decent amount of student loan debt. And so I felt like I had to be the stable income source to try to pay down that debt. And eventually we got it paid off. And so then I finally felt like, okay, I've done my part to kind of like get us out of this hole. Now it's my turn to take a leap of faith.
Yeah, you're
That's
so spot on. Like, it's funny, a lot of the things that you just mentioned, I align with so much, not only as an engineer, but just having a W 2, because you're spot on in that it is security, it is solid,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a prideful career. Like, if you told someone
Sure.
you were an
Yeah.
engineer for 30 years, like, you'd be proud to say that, right? And, for
Yeah.
me included, like, as an engineer, my wife is a nurse, like, those are like, you could argue, two well paying jobs, as well as beautiful
Yep.
careers that you could retire from with the 401k in the future. But you saw something bigger, not only in yourself. What's beautiful that your wife freaking pushed you to do that too. So how long were you an engineer up until you ultimately made the decision to go all in on your own entrepreneurial endeavors?
So I I was an engineer. Gosh, what is that? 15
Oh my
wow.
years.
gosh. Okay.
7 of which I was married. So yeah, it was a long time. And I dabbled in some other careers. Like I tried doing sales at one point. I was a financial advisor for 2 years, and I just failed miserably. So I tried taking a couple risks along the way, and just they didn't go the way I expected. So I just kind of went back into that safe
Yeah.
space. But yeah, you're totally right. Like I feel like as an engineer, you rest on your intelligence as like your badge of honor. Like, well, I'm smart, and so I'm valued for being smart. Um, but you see quickly that like being smart doesn't in the real world doesn't get you anything. It's like cool, you're smart. So what? Somebody else is athletic. Like whatever. It's just a trait. And it's like that alone is not gonna take you places. So you really got to push beyond that and find your way in the world.
I'm really
Interesting.
curious what that leap look like because I'm picturing in my head, and I've had a couple massive career transitions in my life where it's like it never really happens overnight. I've never really just quit and then started something from the ground up new until this last year. But it had been percolating. Like I'm a planner, I'm a strategist. So for you, you are you planning on doing this? Like, do you get your license before? Are you dabbling on the weekends? Like, what does that transition really look like for you? Because I think for everyone else out there, it's one of the scariest things
Yep.
ever to think about how to rebuild.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Some people are
for
planners and
sure.
strategists naturally, and some people just have, frankly, like the balls to walk right off the cliff. So I'm
Yeah, yeah.
curious.
I wish I was number two. But I thought about it for probably 5 years. Like I knew I needed to leave. You feel that like stirring in your soul, and you're like, I know this is where I need to go, but I just can't. I can't do it. I can't take the leap of faith. So it was literally like I was just waiting for us to feel like we had enough of a nest egg, that I could just leave with no plan. Because I knew if I was working, I would never allocate the time to find the next thing. because I would just always use excuse. Oh, I got to focus on work. I got to focus on work. So literally, I gave myself a drop dead date. I said, okay, February of 2020 is the date I'm just going to quit. And I have no plans after that. And we had saved enough up that I knew I could float myself for a while, and figure it out. So it had nothing to do with COVID. It was
Insane.
literally like February 2020 is my date, and I quit. And then like 2 weeks later, the whole world shut down. So then I was like, oh gosh, now what? Now I'm just sitting around doing
That is
Well, I mean,
nothing.
absolutely wild.
that's so much courage to make that decision. As I sit here currently, as you know, Kip and Daniela both, I work a full time W-2 as an engineer as I sit here. So,
Yeah.
and I'm at an interesting phase with now 2 kids under 2 and a wife that I'm trying to retire out of her W-2 so she can achieve her dreams of becoming a full time mama bear and all those things. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd be lying if I didn't think about what you just mentioned and what you said and those ambitional goals of moving on. So for you, I guess, leading up to say that date, you set a date and you fulfilled just executing that date, I guess, in that,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of our viewers are likely in a very similar position as I am of having a job or a career or whatever it may be, and they're looking to make that transition. What, I guess, in those waning days and in that transition, where was your head at? I guess what ultimately allowed you the comfort, because for me, I always push out that goalpost of like, once I get this amount of money, okay, cool. But once I have this amount of properties of passive income, okay, cool. But once my kid's in school, like all these little things, what ultimately led to you making that decision of like, okay, today's the day?
That's a good. I don't know if there was a specific like impetus for it. I just finally was like, I'm done. This was it. I had kind of waffled on it for so long, and I was finally like, I know myself that if I don't give myself a hard date, it'll never happen. So, kind of like sometimes, like going to the gym. It's like I could sit here. You wake up in the morning like, gosh, I don't want to work out, and it's not until you make the decision to get out of bed and go that once you put the decision in your mind, then everything starts to roll after that, and you're just following your original decision. But it's that first decision to be like, okay, this is it. I'm just going to give myself. You're kind of like sabotaging
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yourself. You're like, I'm going to make this decision, and then I'm going to make myself have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's what it was
Okay.
for me, at least.
So you
You're good. I don't have the ability like you. I couldn't set up a side thing. Like I wish I had that. I
It's so
wish I had
true.
that
So true.
discipline.
discipline.
Some people do and some people don't.
Well, it's
It's
not just
Yeah.
discipline.
discipline,
Just
Daniela, like all of those
energy, though.
characteristics, no doubt, but he's spot on in that a lot of engineering careers, let alone I would bet Kip you were in the office too, right? Like actually physically.
Mhm. Yeah.
So even me
Yeah.
as well too, like, in that time frame, a lot of for me, I started really in real estate about 4 to 5 years ago as well, to where that was during COVID, where I was able to work remotely and have some integration of the side hustle alongside my main hustle. And so a lot of that engineering world, you're in the office and just grinding your 9 to 5, if you will. Like you don't have the
Mhm.
bandwidth resources. You're mentally exhausted by the end of day, and so
Yeah.
yeah, you're spot on, no doubt.
So I want to interrupt and ask. You mentioned the sales job that you had previously and it
Mm,
not going well.
Yeah.
So as you enter this new
Yeah.
phase, you decide to become a real estate agent. And I'm curious, as
Yeah.
you're thinking about that, are you going, all right, I'm going to get as many listings as I can? Or do you already know from the get, like, I've got to learn how to build and flip?
Um, I didn't. The flipping was not in the cards for me at the beginning at all. I was just. My mom was a realtor. Um, I always loved real estate. I've always loved walking through houses. I love everything about real estate. But in my mind, I was always like, well, I'm an engineer. I'm a math guy. So being a realtor would be beneath me. Which is just one of those things. I don't know. When you go through school and you're like, I'm good at academics, so I should always do something
Mhm.
academically challenging. But when I decided, I thought, well, maybe my mom will kind of help bring me under her wing, and help kind of we'll build up the business together. A lot of her clients were my friends, right? Because they would come to me and say, hey, do you know a realtor? And it's my mom. So I figured, well, maybe at least I could get some of those leads and slowly build it up from there. So I wish I had some big grand plan, but it was really just like, let's do this and try to build it up slowly. And then the flipping thing just kind of came along, thankfully, out of personal relationships.
Wow. So did you sell a few houses before you started your first?
I did. I did a few. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did some friends'
Okay.
parents'
Oh, cool.
houses. And it was good. It was I think it was good to start there and like get a feel for what it's like to deal with clients because it's a lot. I mean, you guys deal with probably even more difficult. It's like in distress sellers with I'm sure their own set of issues and you got to navigate and massage those relationships. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I'm like the first house you see that you think you can do this on. Do you just come up on
Yep.
it? Is it because I always had this question. I became licensed in September of last year, and at first I really thought I wanted to do the residential thing. I have a family
Right.
that has had a construction company for about 40 years, and I was owner operator of that company for 15 years. And so I thought, oh, this is total natural progression for me, you know. But
Mhm.
I had a lot of mindset issues around flips. I still do, where I'm going,
Hmm.
and it's so silly because when I think about what you and I do, Landon, and like how challenging that is. And then I think about this, I'm going, it's a formula, it's a process, it's a standard
Mhm.
operating
Yeah.
procedure. And it's just something that I'm holding myself back from, I think. Um, but long story short, it was like as silly as, well, do they buy it cash? Do they buy it hard money? Like, how much time do they give themselves? Is there a gap fund? I'm like sitting there going through all these silly little things and being
Yeah.
in construction for so long and having so many issues, right? Hard to have
Right.
a good crew, hard to make sure they show up. I've been on $250,000 job sites where I've had guys walk off and we're supposed to be done in 10
Mm.
days. And I'm going, I have no one. I have to put a Craigslist ad out. I have no one. I don't know what to do right now. So, I mean, literally standing there, just like, okay. So I'm curious, how did this really start?
So I was lucky. I had a buddy of mine who's like a serial entrepreneur. And I had been telling him, I was thinking about buying a business at one point, just finding something to do to get out of the corporate world. And so he finally was like, hey, I'm getting back into flipping. He's a wholesaler and he's done some flips. And so he's like, I'm getting back into flipping with a partner. And neither one of us are very process oriented guys. We're the visionaries and we need an integrator essentially. So he's like, will you help us try to scale this thing up beyond what it
So
is right
awesome.
now? So it was kind of like training wheels, It's like I got to come into a situation where they already had contractors, they already had deal flow because one of them's a wholesaler. So I was really fortunate to get that, which I think just kind of goes back to the whole you are who you surround yourself with. That opportunity would have never come to me had I not put myself out there to people that I knew personally that were doing things that I wanted to do. And that's an area where I always struggled in the past of like not wanting to ask for help, not wanting to, put myself in a position of like, I don't know, humility to be like, hey, I know you're doing what I want to do. How can you help? How can you help me essentially? So once that happened, it's like then I was off to the races really.
Interesting. So that what I'm hearing there is it ended up not so much being you going I want to flip homes and you
Hmm.
being like I always make a joke of like you rednecking it and figuring out the how, like
Yeah.
instead of a how you transition that to a who, and you
Yeah.
met these
Yeah.
people, you met this person, you've known this person for a while, and you've shared with them your goals and dreams, and symbiotically you guys were able to figure out a way to work together such that he has the how, he's figured out the how, he has the pieces in place, he needs a who that can fill that last
Hmm.
gap, and you guys can work together cohesively to try and do that first flip together. So what did that first flip look like what was the property, and then what really was your
Yep.
role?
So the agreement from the start was we're gonna give you some houses essentially, and you're going to manage them, because in order for you to figure out how to make this process better, you got to figure out what it is, what the process is to begin with. So it was literally like, all right, we're going to start buying some flips, and you're going to run them. You can call us if you
Oh
need
my
help with
God.
anything, but this is your
What?
thing. So, and I'm like, I'm not even a handy guy. I mean, I can hang pictures
Oh my
sometimes.
God.
That's it. So like, I need it. There's no way I could be the how, right, or the who. Like, I don't know how to do anything, which is probably good. It forces you to have to delegate everything. So the first house was, it was just like, we got one, and I walk in day one with our partner that's the construction guy, to like walk through the existing house, and he's like throwing out ideas about what we're gonna do, and I'm just like, okay, taking notes. And then it was just like, go.
Wow.
So for that first one, it was, I was like one step at a time. I was like, okay, we demo the house. Okay, what's next step? Like, I didn't know
Yeah.
anything. He's like, okay, well, once everything's out, now we got to do plumbing and electrical, everything that's inside
Yep.
the walls. And I didn't know, I
Yeah.
didn't know anything. So it's amazing I even finished that first flip,
Were
honestly.
you like giving, did your
Crazy.
partners, the wholesalers, did they go, okay, Kip, like this cannot go beyond this budget? Like, did they go, this is your egg to get all of this done, and like you deal with the construction guy, but like you can't go beyond this?
No, their whole mindset is just like, do it as cheaply as possible.
Wow.
So that was the thing
Okay.
from the beginning, is just do it as cheaply as possible. Thankfully, the contractors, they're already their guys, so I don't really have to negotiate
Sure,
rates or
sure.
anything like that. It's more like all the finishes, what am I picking out, and how
Wow.
much am I spending on these things, right? So I'm trying to like get a look together, by getting pretty inexpensive materials. And I actually think the first flip turned out really nice. It was really pretty. Um, my wife would tell you that I have no design taste whatsoever.
You're an
but
engineer.
I feel like I did a pretty
You're an
good job with
engineer.
that.
You're
Yeah,
a math
I'm an
guy.
engineer,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. But I really like it. I mean, and if I go back and look at pictures of it now, like, it's a little dated, 3 years old now, but I feel like it was
So you're not
pretty
wincing.
good.
You're not going, oh my God.
Yeah.
No, no. And people, I had friends that like saw the pictures online, like, hey, looks great.
Wow.
So I felt like, that was like a really good first feedback. Like, okay, maybe I am actually
So what
decent at
was, I
this.
guess, a couple questions here. So acquiring the property, where did you guys find this? Was it an off market property? Did you purchase it from a wholesaler? Did you guys buy it cash, or did you guys use a hard money loan to acquire it? Or
So it was a wholesaler dealer. In our original partnership, there's three of us. There was me, then there was one who's like construction guy, and then the third is a wholesaler. So it was from his
Got
wholesaling
it.
business. So we knew it was a
Yep.
good deal.
Okay.
So yeah, again, flipping is all about the
Yep.
buy. Like, all your money's made on the buy. So if you get a good buy, there's so much room for error and to still make profit. So we got a hard money loan. So I think we put like 20% down and got the rest in hard money.
Okay, so you did put
And
you
we
actually
didn't.
did put 20% down. So they didn't
Yep.
cover 100% of the
Yep.
acquisition and the rehab. So you actually had to bring
No.
some money to the table. And it was that something that I'm getting into the nitty gritty here, just because I'm very interested myself and I want to learn from you. Is you hear about getting in and doing a flip and having a hard money cover 100% of the acquisition and a bunch of the rehab and whatnot. And so
Yep. Yep.
and those lenders might be out there. They're probably charging an arm and a leg for those. But so you bring 20%, probably close to what, $100,000 down or something like that, or 80.
This was 2021, so this is
Oh,
before the
was it?
big
Okay.
explosion in home prices. So I think we bought the house for, I don't know,
Okay. So
300,000 or
60K.
something like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, 60K
Okay.
down. So not
Okay.
crazy.
And then is the agreement such that, because you have your wholesaler, so he brings the deals, so then he's done. He's not involved really anymore. And then the construction guy is involved. You're involved, but you're managing really everything. And then being the agent, you're probably at the end going to list the property for the team.
Yeah.
So I guess
Yep.
the construction guy, what's his role? Because it sounded like you were managing the construction crews.
Yeah, and he was a lot more involved
Okay.
early on, just because I needed some hand holding. So like, essentially like having an expert like on
Got it.
speed dial. So literally I could call him, and I called him a lot at the beginning, obviously. So for advice on things, and then I'm using all of his trades, so guys that have worked for him for years and years and years, so they're loyal to him. I don't have to worry about them like pulling something over on me. Like they're there to help, so all of that expertise really helped me out. And I was just kind of directing them, for lack of a better term. And then the listing side was kind of an extra little perk, like, hey, since you're managing these, you get to list them and you
Oh,
get the
cool.
commission on the
Okay.
listing.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So you have this first one, and I'm
Mhm.
still sitting here going, you started this in 2020. This first flip happened in 2021. It's
Mhm.
still early
Yep.
2024, and you've done 30. What is
Yeah.
the average
Yeah.
length? I mean, was it just like some lipsticks, some this, some guts? Like, what did you end up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so curious.
So the part that I forgot to leave out is, in order to start this whole thing, they already were doing a bunch of other flips also. So we didn't want to like commingle funds between flips they were already doing. So we raised our own fund. The idea was, we're going to raise our own fund, and then Kip, you're going to manage all the properties within that fund. So we started with a chunk of money that we were able to go out and buy houses with, and then we slowly added to that fund over the couple of years. So it was pretty much like, well, we have money in the account. We know
Get
how,
it done.
so let's try to keep it fully allocated as much as possible. So we're just like, anytime we had money, it's like, let's go try to find another property to add to it. So I started out with two at a time. We bought two right off the bat, and then literally, like, after the first two flips, we bought the lot for our spec build, which I just finished
Wow.
last year. Like, it took forever to get drawings and stuff, but we really ramped it. I mean, it was like two lipstick flips, and then you're buying a new build. So it's just like jumping in the deep
Pretty big
end,
gap.
um, yeah, it is. But I feel like, for me at least, like, I have to do that. Otherwise, I have to just throw myself into situations where it's over my head, and then you just figure
Yep.
it out. And it's awful, and it's hard, and it's frustrating. But if you do it slowly and safely, like, you don't grow as
Right.
fast, So I'm glad we did it that
Yeah, and
way.
I wonder, during this journey and whatnot, your mindset going through all of this, you're operating as an agent, you're probably doing some listings and selling some homes in between to
Hmm.
keep, you have your financial runway, but your main money vehicle is you're being an agent, and now you're doing some flips on the side and whatnot. At any moment in this journey, do you think, or did your mind ever go back to the security of your full-time engineering career you had?
No.
Or were
Wow.
you just committed to that journey and you were going to see it through?
Yeah. No, I was 100% in from the moment. Like, I knew that was going to be it, right? Like, I feel like you get those stirrings in your soul for a
Yeah.
reason, and like, that's, you got to follow that. And like, as soon as I was like living in that, it felt right. So like, I knew I was where I needed to be, from the moment. And the only thing I regretted was not doing it sooner. You know. So that's the one thing, is like, I tell people, if you feel that, like, that was put there, you got to listen to that voice and like follow it, and it's going to be
Yeah.
scary and whatever, but there's so much more on the other side of that than just waiting behind the safety of what you got right now.
Landon, I think you and I have been very like pace cars for a while, both of us at the same time. Like, we both kind of came together at the same time. Me being your TC, you really getting started in this wholesaling thing, you meeting Chris and starting your partnership with Chris. We both had full time jobs. We both took, I feel like we both had deals that were just nightmares. Like, everything was just so hard. Every deal felt so freaking hard. Um, and I know you're still at your full time job. I left my full time job in December. I probably wouldn't have left if I didn't have a terrible boss. And I was a couple months pregnant going,
Mhm.
how is this going to work? Like, how am I going to do all this? I probably would have stayed. And I've gone through that in the last 4 months. I keep applying to jobs. Like, I have this thing in me where I'm
Mm.
going, I keep going back to that safety net of, well, now I can hire people at my TC business, and I can have assistants, and I can run files and work at I keep trying to like bring myself back there. I have never had a job or problem getting a job in my life, ever. I've never, ever, like somebody calls me for an interview, got the job. I have been passed up on for like 4 jobs in a row. And I think I'm finally starting to understand the universe is going, stop, just stop. And it's one of those really funny things that you're talking about, that security and listening to yourself. And, I've talked to Landon a lot about this too, about just, it's so hard when you have young kids. And like, there's like that default parent, right? That's like got that W-2 and it's super consistent. It is I hate to say it's like a pre-midlife crisis when you make that transition into full-time entrepreneurship, but it's a total identity crisis. It's totally weird. Mm-hmm. It's at the same time an identity crisis, and at the same time you can't even remember what happened before, because this is so it's crazy. I'm curious for you, Landon. I'm super curious for you what it's going to look like for you. I really am.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously so am I, right? But I think about, and I listen to Kip's story, and I hear other people who've made that, transition out of a W-2 to entrepreneurship. And, I'm looking forward to that day, and I'm excited, but I genuinely enjoy what I do and the value I provide for the community in terms of my projects with Amazon and the grocery stores and the engineering of it that Kip alluded to. But,
you have a sweet gig, like you have a sweet deal.
No, they're awesome, and they're good people and everything. But like the aspect that's interesting is, I have no ambition to, and I already know what Kip's going to say here is that, I work my W-2 and I have my side hustle that I'm working and building and what I'm doing. That's eventually going to be the main hustle at a certain point. I have no idea when, but the transition when that time comes isn't to let off the gas. It's not as if I'm taking a step back and just simply removing that. So now I have 40 hours of my week and my side hustle is doing its thing. No. Now I have an even greater responsibility, a greater, especially with 2 young kids now. Like that's the biggest thing. But it's also too, like what I touched on earlier, is like I always move the goalposts further down the field, is to like, now I have 2 kids, so I can't remove that security instrument that I have sitting right there, Yeah. So, so you're doing these flips, which, you mentioned, there's a lot of cushion in that, especially being that you have basically an in-house wholesaler finding the deals for you. So he's bringing good deals to you. You're underwriting it. You have a construction crew. You have all the integral pieces to succeed. And so you hit the nail on the head early, is you are lucky, but also too, you earned that relationship by being who you are and what you did. And so it's cool now. So you did the first flip. How long did that first flip take?
I think it's 60 to 90 days, probably somewhere in that range.
Okay. So 3 months. And in that 3-month time period, you're managing, you're figuring out you as like no more W-2, you're figuring out this and whatever it may be. Did you have a few listings at the same time you were either selling or?
At that point, no. I think my first flip was like that.
Really?
And I was there way more than I needed to be there. I'm there every day, sometimes just sitting around, I don't know. Like it just felt cool to be on a job site. Right. So yeah, I was not as spread thin at that point. It was just like, this is it. And then the second one started like a month later, and then I had 2 going. And so, then just kind of like going from one child to 2 children, it's like, then you got to learn to resource planning and
that's
all
a great
that stuff.
analogy.
So
I get. We talked about this on the last episode, Danielle and I did, about how from having no kids and thinking I had responsibility in this structured life, and then having a kid and realizing, okay, now I really have responsibility, and you're living a a life, and then you have the second kid, and you're like, oh, having 1 kid was easy, so now having 2 kids, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then every time you hear someone with 1 kid talk about how hard it is, you're like, you have no idea. That's level 1.
Level 1.
You're going to head to level 4. Yeah. So, okay. So now you're doing this, you're going at it. It's so cool, so inspirational. It's all about, those relationships that you built and networking and everything, and you've been staying steady now such that you've done 30 flips. And is that, and then does that include the new build? And you've done a few new builds, is that correct?
Yeah,
Or
I've done one new build to completion. We had another one that we bought the land, but it was too messy. So we sold it
cool.
pre-construction. So, so one all the way
Okay.
through.
And you primarily focus in your local backyard here in Maricopa County and Phoenix area? Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Way cool.
And I've slowly kind of tried to like hone in on a smaller and smaller geographic area. Like
Mm.
I've done flips literally in every corner of the
Oh,
city.
interesting.
And I realized that like, man, the drive time is enough to
Wow.
Oh, okay.
it's just not worth it. Like if I'm doing one in Gilbert and I'm doing one in Glendale, like I can't go to both properties in one day. And so I try to get as many properties right near each other at the same time as possible. So it's like as efficient as can be.
So, as far as out of state flips go, would that be something that you'd ever do? Because
Mm.
it sounds like you like to be really involved. You like to go, be on site. You like to be physically measuring things yourself. As the flip is progressing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I know there are people that do out of state flips all the time, and I'm sure that I could figure it out. But I feel like it'd have to be. I'd want the contractor to be partnered with me on the deal instead of contracted on the deal.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing some light remodeling work to this house in Utah, and I got the quote back for the work, and like I know how
You're
much
like,
things
no way.
cost now, and so I know how much this guy's making in profit off of me, and it's like shocking every time I get a quote from him because I know that this, like you're making money just by finding the contractor, so. I feel like if I had a partner and they're invested in the profit of the project instead of just making money on the work, then our goals are aligned instead of it always being kind of like
Absolutely.
us kind of pushing in opposite directions.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I remember this takes me back July, August of last year when we purchased one of our rental properties up in Kalispell, Montana. And, coming up from Arizona, we had a whole budget in mind and a plan of attack in terms of our construction, in terms of what we were going to be doing and this and that, and quotes for stuff. I'm sitting in a home right now that cost me $3,300 for the entire interior paint of the whole home. And it's almost a
Yeah.
3,000 square foot home. Right.
What?
That's a killer deal. Yeah.
And,
Don't come to
yeah.
San Francisco, guys. Don't come to the Bay Area.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
but we go up to Kalispell and our house up there is only, 1,800 square feet. And our quote was like $9,000. And I'm like, what am I missing here? And it's just, there's not a ton of painters in town, supply and demand, all these different factors, and it's off season. It's, it's peak season. So everyone's booked. So if you want us to do it next week, you're paying a premium surplus charge. So all these things. And I'm like, holy cow. And then we had to rip the carpet out and get the carpet replaced, and electrician and all this and that. And it's like, well, we need to plan better for that, or pick more strategic locations for flip type stuff,
Sure. Yeah. Have someone there that's got contacts already.
That's that team piece though,
Yeah.
that is so easy to overlook when you're in scale mode with real estate and you have a good deal. You go, I have the deal. I'll figure out the team. It always ends up being like that. But I'm learning from other people, especially that the team, it's so hard. It's impossible for me to pick a market. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's like, it's really, really hard. I think if I could pick a market, I'd probably be 50 steps ahead of where I am right now.
Right.
Commit to it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there, I guess, for you, Kip, in your time frame now, you're 4 years into your entrepreneurship journey, your flipping journey, honestly, and whatnot, and what you're doing. Is there a specific flip that stands out to you, or deal? I mean, it could be the new build, it could be a buy and hold, it could be something that stood out to you in your journey that you want to illustrate, or you got the most lessons out of, that's going to propel you for the next 30 flips, 60 flips in the next few years?
Yeah. So, honestly, I think that new build is what really like pushed me to the next level. I had never done one, and we hired a builder. So, like, don't get it twisted. I'm like out there managing like a new construction project. There's no way I could have
Right.
done that. But I was integrally involved. We had a designer and we had a builder, and I was like the third person, kind of like bridging the gap there. And this new build, originally we were thinking we're going to sell it for like 2.5 million, and we ended up selling it for 3.75 million thanks to inflation. So it was like way beyond any scope, any property I had ever done before. So it's easy to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going out into territory that's like, what if I mess up? Like everything's got to be dialed
Yeah.
in at that price point. Like it's like if it's poorly done, it's just not going to sell. So it was scary, like you start second guessing, like, ooh, are we using the right trades? Are we doing whatever? But the designer just like opened my eyes to like the whole next level of aesthetics in a
Mm.
home. Um, and so like that was one thing that since then I feel like I've taken all my flips to a
Oh,
higher
cool.
level, because it's not just before it was like let's find the cheapest fixture on Wayfair or Home Depot and save 40 bucks if you can on a fixture. And now I realize like buy the nice stuff, like put the good stuff in the house. It shows, it's very obvious when you have nice stuff versus the cheap stuff, and people will pay for that, especially if you're doing the right price point. So that really just like opened my eyes on from a design standpoint. And then second was just like the confidence to like we did this build, and we like pushed comps. Like I had to go back and forth with the appraiser to explain to her why our house was selling for, probably $500,000 more than what you could argue that house should
Right.
sell for, um, because we went to the next level. So it takes away the like the fear, the inferiority complex of being like, well, that's a almost a $4 million house. I'm not at
Mm.
that level. To do it and do it, and people bought it and they loved it, and it was like now it's like the fear's gone. Like I look at a $2 million house and I'm like, it's a $2 million house. It's whatever. Um, which is crazy to say. I would never
Totally.
said that before, but you realize one that like buyers are buyers, and at whatever price point, there's still buyers who are buying on emotion, and are buying on a yeah. That what is how do they feel when they walk into a
Absolutely.
house? And so nothing is bigger than
Right.
you. Like even listing even being the agent on that, I was like, I'm not a luxury broker. You get imposter syndrome so easily. And once you go through that, you go, okay, I don't have to be afraid of anything
Yeah.
anymore. Like just because I haven't done it before doesn't mean I
Do you
can't do it.
think,
You know?
in that process, I think about this from time to time, and you hit the nail on the head in terms of imposter syndrome, but it's so cool to hear. And I have so many questions here about this because of that sale point. And I got the opportunity to walk through this property. It was stunning, and its location is so like ideal. But the, so you're starting with your first one, you purchased it for literally, what is that, 10% of what you just sold this new build for. You bought your first flip for
Mhm.
$300,000, and now you're elevated to $3.75 million type properties and whatnot. Do any point in the process did you ever, because I battle this in full transparency, like there's a level I'm seeking self-validation that I'm
Mm.
capable and I'm
Sure.
willing and I'm able enough to do these level of deals and purchase and sell these levels of properties and flip this level of property at this price point I deserve. I'm, all those little things in that process.
Yeah. I don't know. It's always there. I feel like anytime you do something new, that feeling is always there of, it's this is too big for me. I'm not, I can't do this. And so I don't know. I just think you just gotta try it. And anytime I've done something new and scary and whatever, it's like once you get through it, you realize that okay, that was not. I was making that out to be bigger than it really was.
Right.
So like, and I'll still get it. I look at like what you guys do, and I'm like, gosh, I can never do that. Like it's such a I don't have that skill set or whatever. But it's the fear of the
It
unknown,
is.
and like once you just force yourself to do it, you realize okay, and then it gives you the confidence. It's a little bit less imposter syndrome every time you go try something new, because you're like, all right, the last 5 things that I was afraid of, I got through and they weren't that scary. So this one's probably not going to be that scary either when I really get into it.
Interesting.
It sounds like you had a lot of it. Like very early on, after you made the decision to make this transition, you had the opportunity to go through several like baths by fire. Like absolutely, it's like you didn't really have a choice. These opportunities came to you, and it was like, cool, okay, we have the house. Call us if you need us. Like it'll be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Figure it out. And I think you're right. Being in those situations is just it pushes you through so much growth so quickly, and it's not perfect growth. It's imperfect growth. It's supposed to be. But Landon, you and I have been through that a couple times in 2022, where it was just like, holy moly. And now we look back at some of those deals and properties, and it's much easier to think about how to navigate complex situations now, just based on the few things that we picked up, many. And I'm sure the same thing for you, Kip, where you're going like, the day you ended that was like, oh my God, that house. And now it's going, yeah, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
I'm curious how you balance this with the kids and with family. Is it like, is your wife full time with kids? Or you both work?
No.
How do you guys manage that? I'm super curious because I am marching into 3, and it's, everything gets more expensive.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. My wife still works full time. The end goal is like Landon to get her to feel like she can, if she wants, be just a full time mom. But she likes what she does. She's good at what she does. So it is tough. It's like every day is just like it's a juggling act. It's like we push and pull. Some days she needs me more, and I got to step in and do more home stuff, and some days she does. So thankfully our kids are only 5 and younger. So we don't have like all the sports
Right.
after. Like I feel like that's even a next level. You got like teenagers and you got sports events all day, all night, all weekend. I feel like, yeah, at some point you either have to, one of the spouses has to be like, all right, I'm going to take on more of the home care side of things, or you got to find like childcare help. Like, like we have a nanny that helps watch the kids during the day, and she's like part of our family at this
Yeah.
point. Like, she's great and she loves our kids and it's awesome. And my wife works from home, so she gets to like pop in and out of the room and like be there. Um, but it's like the kids all have to be taken care of, so if it's not one of you, if that's not if that doesn't work for you, you got to find the help that you need. So it's I don't know, it's tough for sure, and I wish I had a better answer, because you also feel guilty, like if you're both working and you have somebody help watch the kids, like you feel guilty, you feel like, am I giving the kids enough
Right.
time? Am I, like, is this, am I choosing money over kids? I don't know.
It's an ongoing
So
thing, though. There's
it's
nothing,
tough.
and I've talked to
Yeah.
so many friends about this, and most of, strangely, like people that have kids now that are 16, 17, 18. There's just no perfect solution for 5 and under. There's just no perfect,
Yeah.
there's no perfect
Yeah.
solution for different phases, and I think that it's so unique to the
Yeah.
family, and you always go through those that weight of, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Is my time in the right bucket? Do we
Yes.
have
Yes.
enough?
Yeah.
What if this happened?
Yeah.
And that's why, we take
Hmm.
pride and joy, and I think all 3 of us really enjoy working, but at the same time, it's life is just not easy. There's no
Hmm.
perfect balance.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you want to show your kids the value of work, right? Like, one thing that's really cool is, my kids are always like, "Oh, Daddy, you're going to build houses or whatever," and like they'll come look at my houses and they love it and they love seeing it. And so I feel like I've put a seed in their brain, like, you can go like do these things that seem like really these grand things, and like it's possible to do that instead of just be like, oh, I'm going to go sit in an office for 8 hours and, do whatever.
Exactly.
So I hope that I'm like planting seeds for them in the future to be like, big things are what I want to
Yeah, you're
when I
so
get
spot
there.
on. Like I remember growing up, I'm the first really in my family to ever go to college, let alone get a degree and push through to get, a true career out of that and live the quintessential, my parents' dream like ambitions for me, right? Of their
Mhm.
ceiling and whatnot. And um I think about now in the stakeholder position that I'm in as a father, as a parent, thinking about and reflecting on my life and then the architecture of our children's lives and what that can look like, should look like, and what they want. They obviously their values matter in terms of what they want to do. But, you think for me, I think about even just as simplistic as a type of school. Are we going to send our kids to school? Are we going to do some type of privatized education or homeschooling? And whose responsibility for that? Is that my wife? Is that partly me? But also, too, you get older and say they're in high school, it's ultimately up to them, obviously. But do I push college? Where do I stand in that viewpoint to them to share with them the values of what they want to do if they want to do that or entrepreneurship and I guess really more than anything is I want to give them options and choices when they get older such that they can go the route of entrepreneurship and hopefully taking over daddy's portfolio or partnering with dad and we go do other bigger things together and all those things and whatnot. But if they choose to go to college, great. And hopefully we'll be in a financial position such that we can do that and they go choose to become a doctor or whatever it may be. But it's a delicate balance of figuring out what you do value and balancing your time. I have to be hyper intentional about my time. Like for instance, right now, once we're done here, we're going to go up to Pace in Arizona for a couple hours today with our family. And I need to be
Cool.
intentional about that car ride, that trip, spending time with the family. Because it's
Mhm.
so easy to pick up this thing right here and find problems. Right. And the thing is that also too, I have the people around me, the Daniellas, the Chris's, even the Kips. Like you guys are all problem solvers, especially Kip as an engineer. Like your title shouldn't be engineer; it should just be problem solver. I feel like all we do is just
Mhm.
solve problems at all times, no matter what, good and bad.
Yep. Yep.
And so for me, I have to be hyper intentional with my time, and I'm sure in the flipping process and the new build process for you as it relates to, because timelines matter, right? Your hard money's out there and it's accruing interest every day. So every day, every hour, all those little things stack up so you can list the home and get it ready to go and whatnot. Um, I guess how much forethought are you putting into these? Are you forecasting like a critical path or a Gantt chart of like your timing of all of these things to project how long these projects are going to take and almost stagger or stack your listing dates and all those things? Or how do you typically manage your schedules to maximize how many flips you can take on at any one moment?
Yeah, we come up with schedules, like not Gantt chart level. I Gantt charts give
I
me
know, right?
PTSD.
I said that was a trigger word for you. I
I
know
like
it.
As
don't
soon as you
say
said
it.
that, I was like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Yeah, yeah, gosh. Um, yeah, so like we have broad schedules, and we kind of think, okay, this is how long this would take. And honestly, like they almost always take longer than you think. The more complex the project, the more chances there are for things to come up. So it's always that is always that clock is ticking in the back of your head when you got hard money, and especially when you calculate out how much you're paying per day on these properties, it can really like put you at a place of feeling stressed out. So that alone just kind of keeps you moving. Like you always have to be pushing. You have to be pushing. Um, so when you get behind schedule, then it's like, okay, how can we get back on track? And that happens a lot. So that's where it gets hard to turn it off at night,
Yeah.
because you're like, all right, I things only move as fast as I push them. So if I don't push it, if I don't do this thing tonight and send this person this information they need for tomorrow to work, I've just cost us a day. So that's still an area that I am struggling with, and um, I think at some point I need to find a who to like to come in and help shore that up for me. But like everything else, it's like you're always afraid to like, all right, when am I gonna commit to taking on an additional liability, knowing that they'll probably in the long term I'll be like, oh, I wish I'd done that sooner. But it's always like when taking that next leap of faith to like, all right, I'm gonna bring on somebody else, is always it's always a tough decision.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Kip, I'm going. I feel like we've walked through the last 5 years of your life, and you're in a completely different place. And I appreciate you talking so granularly about it because a large part of our audience is so new to investing, and plenty of them still have W-2s, and probably that idea of even getting started with a side hustle like Landon and really developing a strong business, and the idea of leaping from that is just, it's a great divide. So I really appreciate you talking about what you do at a granular level, and I can't wait to get out to Arizona and walk some of your properties. It'll be so cool.
One last question I had, Kip, for you before we take off and wrap up here and whatnot is, you know, through this journey up until this point, obviously this is, still in progress, right? You're still in the infancy of what you're going to accomplish. And I'm so excited to, watch what you do and see your projects and how big we get, with what you're doing. But what would you say, in this journey, looking back, are maybe some characteristics or some traits that you've developed in that time period, and maybe top three characteristics or whatever, and maybe a skill or two that you've had to develop that you didn't have or you've had to sharpen, that's allowed you to get to where you're at right now, and something that people should focus on in terms of developing that same skill or developing that characteristic or that mindset or whatever it may be.
Yeah, great question. Um, Man, I think one of the things that I've gotten better at is finding the who. And yeah, not have the engineer mindset is figure it out, right? Like you're the smart guy.
Yeah.
You got to go figure it out. And the thing that I've gotten good at is I don't have to be the expert on everything. I need to find the expert on everything. So and it creates so much freedom, right? To find that person and like, oh my gosh, I didn't have to learn that from scratch. I just found the guy that knew how to do it. So that has saved me many, many times, to the point where now I don't want to learn anything. I'd rather find that
Yeah.
guy, right? Like find the team, build the
Yeah.
team. Um, so that's been a huge epiphany for me. The other thing is just in order to be successful, you cannot bury your head in the sand. Like when you have a problem that you don't know how to solve. Like sometimes I have a tendency of, shoot, I'm just gonna procrastinate on this because I don't know how to do it, so I'm just gonna avoid it. And when you're the one driving the project, it's like things grind to a halt unless you're moving it forward. So to just facing the obstacle first and like going head on and just figuring it out. Um, and then I don't know, as far as things that I feel like I've really honed in. I love working with a team and building out a team, and like that's I feel like I've gotten really good about finding people that are good at specific things and bringing them together and like and helping people use their best skills to build out our future as good as possible. So that's my favorite. That's what I loved about engineering is the team aspect, and that's what I love about construction is you bring in all these people with different skill sets to the table and building something really
So
cool out of
true.
that.
So true. I mean, Daniela's going through that right now and putting all the right pieces in place to skyrocket her business as well as I am too. We have varying personalities, varying skills, varying skill sets, mindset, all those little things, and everyone plays a significant role. No role is less than any other role in terms of the process of getting
Yep.
things done. And so, yeah, I think that's a big takeaway for sure to your success and what you've shared. And so, thank you for hanging around for an hour, chatting about
Yeah,
stuff.
it's black.
Where can people find you on social media and all the other things?
Yep. I'm on Instagram. I post a lot of like project before and afters and videos. at Kip Shearer on Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel at Kip Shearer, YouTube as well. More longer form, like project videos and just like topical videos about kind of like what we're talking about here, just things that
Cool.
I've gone through. So either one of those places, I love hearing people's feedback and engaging with them, answering questions. So reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Kip.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Kip.
guys. It was a blast.
See you guys.
And
All
take
right.
care.
Take care.